Hello, hello, and welcome back to yet another NFL video. Man, we are breaking into some elite territory. We are talking about the top 10 teams in football. We have entered, what do they call it? Rarefied air, something like that. Every one of these teams in my top 10, I believe, can win a Super Bowl. I would bet every penny I have that I was about to say some. I was going to say one of these 10 teams are going to win Super Bowl. Obviously, one of the top 10 teams are going to win. But it's like we're talking about teams, right? Where it's like I could really truly look back on this, what 6 7 months from now and say, wow, that's what I thought of the eventual Super Bowl winner. So yeah, man, I'm taking each one of these with a little bit more uh, fine tooth comb, if you will, looking over all these teams, and I got some hot takes here. I am definitely let me put it like this. I believe this season some of the teams that have been really good for the last couple of years are going to take a step back. And I do believe that some teams who have kind of been hovering around being in that elite range are going to enter that this season. So, with that being said, let's get right into the video. As always, thank you for watching. Let's hop straight into things. Starting off with my 10 team, I have the Buffalo Bills. Now, we're starting off with the hot take, right? Because the Bills, they won 13 games last season. They made it to the AFC Championship game where, yet again, they were in a very close game with the Kansas City Chiefs. And there's a lot of reasons to look at the Bills and think that they're going to be the exact first of all, they are in a very weak division, a weaker division, I think, even than going into last season, because at least last year, at the start of the season, people thought the Jets could be competitive with them. We came to find out that the Jets were a disaster, but that, I mean, still, like the preseason thought around the AFC East and the Bills, and I was very low on the Bills last season. So this is 2 years in a row, if you want to put it like that, where I'm low on the Bills relatively. I thought the Bills were going to be a 8 or 9 win team last year. I thought their roster was just not that good, and a lot of credit has to go to Josh Allen. I didn't think Josh Allen was bad, but he had the best year of his career, in my opinion. He absolutely balled out and carried, in my opinion, offense and just team overall to 13-4. And Sean McDermott, yet again, with an amazing coaching job. And what was I saying? So the ways that you could see the Bills being that yet again is that their division relative to where we thought they were last season is even weaker than it was. So I have no doubt in my mind that the Bills are going to win the AFC East. They could even dominate their division, but my whole rankings is based off how good of a team that I think they are. And I think that the Bills overachieved last year in a lot of ways. And you could look at that and say, well, they beat, the Broncos and the Ravens in the playoffs, and I wasn't expecting them to beat the Ravens. I can say that confidently, but I do not think the Bills are going to be able to replicate the success that they had last season for a couple of reasons. First of all, let's talk a little bit more about what they were. They were a top 6 or 7 offense, depending on how you look at it. They were the number 2 offense in the league in terms of points per game. They were number 10 in yards per game, so I tried to even that out a little bit. They were a great offense, no doubt about it. And they were good defensively. Not great. They weren't top 10, but they were certainly above average. And then in that opinion, or in my opinion, that makes them good. Let's look at the stats a little bit. And I do have the Bills winning the division and coming in around 10 or 11 wins. I expect them to make the playoffs, of course, but I do see them taking a slight step backwards here. So, like I said, man, Josh Allen, what is there to say? The man had what, over 4,200 yards, 41 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions, or 6 interceptions rather. He had the best year of his career. He won the MVP. It's weird, right? Because people thought he should have won it 2 years ago when Lamar won it, and now everybody thinks Lamar should have won it last year when Josh Allen won it. So who cares? They each got one the last 2 years, always equal in the world as far as I'm concerned. But the story, I guess, is not just about Josh Allen because I mean, let's start off with James Cook, right? James Cook was the only player on this entire offense that had more than 825 yards. And, he had a really good season. He was a Pro Bowler, deservingly so, 18 touchdowns to 1 fumble. That's an incredible ratio. He was their best offensive weapon, and it was not even close. Now, with that being said, he is undergoing a contract situation right now. How much of an effect does that play into these rankings, well, he's their best offensive player, not named Josh Allen. So him possibly not playing for the next season certainly looms large in this overall scenario. So I don't know how to judge that. I would hope that they figure out his contract situation. First of all, if the reports are true that he wants to be paid along the lines of a Saquon Barkley, listen, he's had a pretty solid, back-to-back group of seasons, but he does not deserve top tier Saquon, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey. He does not deserve those guys' type of money. He needs to put together at least one more big year. But it's a weird situation, right? Because you're not going to give him a 1 year extension to, prove it again. But it's a weird contract situation. I hope they end up bringing him back because they pretty much need him. Because outside of him, I think if, let's just say hypothetically, they cannot resolve his situation, they trade him for a third or a fourth round pick, and they have to roll forward with Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, and Josh Allen. I love their trio of running backs. I think each one does something different. Ray Davis is the more physical, short yardage back. He excels in that role. You also got Ty Johnson being one of the best scat backs in the league. He made so many plays last season on third down where he just picked up a massive chunk of yardage like as a receiver out of the back. Look at that, his stat right there. He averaged nearly 16 yards per catch as a running back. That is absolutely ridiculous. But I love the trio of running backs, but if they lose James Cook, that becomes a pretty lackluster duo, if you will. Their group of receivers, it's really interesting. They don't really have a number one. I know they made the trade to get Amari Cooper in there, and as you can see, he only had about 300 yards in 8 games. He had the worst year of his career, no doubt about it. And they don't bring him back via free agency. So you're rolling forward. They made a couple of additions that we're going to talk about. But it's like the main duo here is Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman with a pretty underwhelming rookie season. He did miss about 4 games, but even if he would have played those games, I don't think anybody would be looking at that as a real, I don't know. But he averaged nearly 20 yards a catch. I think he showed flashes of what they want him to be. He was only 21 years old next season. You would hope he takes a step forward. The Bills definitely need him to, especially if, God forbid, they lose James Cook. Khalil Shakir, I feel like everybody knows what he is. He's a really good slot receiver. Get him the ball kind of at the line of scrimmage and let him go to work. But I don't see him as a real difference making number one receiver, which is why it kind of shocks me that they were so good offensively last year. Because my whole thought process going into last year was they don't have the firepower that Josh Allen needs. Without Stephon Diggs, I thought they were really lacking in talent. And Josh Allen and the offensive coordinator Joe Brady really did get the most out of the group that they had. I thought their tight ends were kind of disappointing. Remember, they spent the first round pick on Dalton Kincaid was it a year or two ago? He also missed 4 games, just like Keon Coleman, but only 448 yards in 13 games. That's not enough, in my opinion. You got guys like Matt Collins who made a pretty good difference as a limited player, but it's like they need to get better, in my opinion. I they kind of struck what's the word? They kind of struck gold last year in like a perfect storm scenario. I feel like they got plus production out of just about everybody. I don't think you can expect to get that 2 years in a row, if you get what I'm saying. And defensively, like I said, above average. The thing that shocks me is that if you look at the guys that missed time, Matt Milano, in my opinion, their best player on their entire defense, only played 4 games last year. So for them to still pretty much salvage their entire season after losing him for pretty much the whole year, that was really impressive to me. They also kind of found out which guys were not the long-term solution. Kyer Elam played his last season for them this previous year, and they also moved on from Von Miller after really a disastrous. Didn't they pay him like a $200 million contract? That was a disaster in hindsight, but they got big time production from guys like Dorian Williams and who else kind of broke out? Christian Benford was a really good cornerback for them last year. So they have a lot of good players, not a whole lot of Pro Bowl caliber talent, but we're going to get to it. But I like their defense overall, just in terms of spread out talent. Let's take a look at their depth chart here. Starting off with their offense, you know, their wide receiver room, it gets better overall. Obviously, you lose Amari Cooper, right? He's kind of, I don't want to say he was their go-to guy because he only had 300 yards, but I think the additions of Joshua Palmer and Elijah Moore, I like both of those additions. I think Josh Palmer did a lot of good things with the Chargers last year, and Elijah Moore, we kind of know what he is, but I feel like he can definitely give you 500 or 600 yards if you use him right. And Laviska Shenault, I'm not expecting big things from him, but it's like they have a lot of number two receivers, Elijah Moore, Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, they need somebody in that group to break out and have a close to, if not more than 1,000 yards next season. So in terms of who, my bets would be on Keon Coleman taking a massive jump if he can stay healthy, but I'm really not sure. And they also need some more production out of that tight end room. Let's go take a look quickly at their offensive line. If you would give me a second to flip to that area of my copious notebook here. One second. All right, so Bills' offensive line, is it not identical to what it was last season? If I'm not mistaken, I don't believe they made any changes. Deion Dawkins at the left tackle comes in as probably their best overall lineman. He's a good left tackle, good pass blocker, only allowed 3 sacks and close to 1,000 snaps played. I really like what they got there. At the right tackle, Spencer Brown, just as good, if not better. They both had too many penalties, way too many penalties. Deion Dawkins had 13, Spencer Brown had 16. Now, the trade-off for that is they only gave up 4 sacks combined. Deion only gave up 3. Spencer Brown only gave up 1 sack and 930 snaps played. He is good as both a pass protector and a run blocker. So really good right tackle, pretty good left tackle. I like their combination there. As far as the interior is concerned, Osiris Torrance, former second-round pick in 2023, I really like that pick from the Bills at the time. He's still kind of getting his feet under him. Played over 1,000 snaps last year. He played the most out of anybody on that offensive line. That's a good sign. Did not give up a single sack either, but did pick up 7 penalties, and his PFF grades were pretty low overall. He's still kind of getting his feet wet in the NFL, but he does need to get better in terms of his overall grades. And Connor McGovern, the center, played close to 1,000 snaps last season. Graded pretty well for a center. Also, just like Osiris Torrance and David Edwards, their left tackle, none of their interior offensive linemen gave up a sack last season. So Josh Allen, he was great in his own respect, but give a lot of credit to this offensive line doing a great job. According to PFF, their entire offensive line in close to 5,000 snaps gave up 5 sacks. So obviously that's not accurate because if we scroll back and see, it says Josh Allen he was only sacked 14 times, but it's like their offensive line did not make a whole lot of mistakes. They played exceptional last season, in spite of the fact that I wouldn't say any of them individually are like at a Pro Bowl, all pro level, but collectively, and I guess, give a lot of credit to the coaching as well. They did a stand up job last season. And finally, David Edwards, their left guard, similarly to both the other guys, no sacks allowed, only 6 penalties. Grades are about average, but I mean, hey, if he's the worst of a really good group of offensive linemen, I feel like you take that, any day of the week. So, a really talented group of offensive linemen. The running backs are, as I discussed earlier. So the offense remains pretty much the same, except you would expect their wide receiver room to get better. But like I said earlier, I do not think they can replicate their offensive success from last year. I would be shocked if they're, number two scoring offense back to back seasons. I feel like people are going to kind of figure out a way to slow down Josh Allen, especially. And he's a really tough player to stop. Like outside of Lamar Jackson, he might be the most dangerous quarterback just with his legs overall, maybe alongside like a Jaden Daniels or something like that. But it's like on a third down, he can pick up that first down in so many ways with his legs, with his arm, scrambling. He'd make so many ridiculous plays out of the pocket. I just feel like that luck kind of has to come to an end at some point. So I do think they're going to take a step back. But defensively, I love the depth that they have at all three levels. Like, let's just look at their bench players or their rotational guys, I should say. They drafted TJ Sanders this year in the draft. Also picked up guys like Landon Jackson and Deion Walker. I love those picks. AJ Epinesa coming off the bench. Michael Hope, Larry Ogunjobi. I believe both those guys were suspended, actually. Dorian Williams, Shaq Thompson. That could be a starting linebacker duo, and I wouldn't feel too bad about it. They got those two guys coming off the bench, rotating in. Dane Jackson, Cole Bishop, Tre'Davious White returns to their secondary. They're back. They are like nobody's calling the Bills a top 10 defense from what I'm seeing, but their depth at all three levels is absolutely incredible. In terms of like the true difference makers they have at the starting lineup, Teron Johnson, Matt Milano when healthy, certainly. I really like Greg Rousseau. Obviously, Ed Oliver, I think just in terms of accolades, might be the most accomplished player. But it's like they have a lot of really, really good players, but I wouldn't say any elite defensive players. Joey Bosa, it's just I'm not going to put a whole lot of weight into that. He's already hurt since he signed with the Bills. So it's like he is just the image a lot of people have of Joey Bosa was not even this decade. Like it's from 6, 7 years ago. At this point, he is always hurt. He's like the Jason Verrett of defensive linemen at this point. So I would not expect him to be all that different from Von Miller, unfortunately. But they pretty much, do just swap Von Miller for Joey Bosa. But yeah, I really like the defense. I would actually not be surprised if they take a step forward from that, 14 to 15 range to like the top 11 or 12. But offensively, like I said over and over again, I just are they going to overachieve and punch above their weight class solely because of Josh Allen 2 years in a row? I feel like something's going to have to happen. They're going to have to make a trade or some player's going to have to break out for them to be what they were last season. So maybe that happens and I'm wrong, but at this point, I am kind of, you know, I'm trying to be, I'm judging them solely based off their talent, which is, a mistake I made last year. Let's see if it happens again. Taking a look at their overall adjustments, quarterback remains the same. Wide receiver is the only aspect of their offense I see improving simply because of the Josh Palmer and Elijah Moore additions, as well as Keon Coleman possibly taking a step forward. Defensive line gets better. I love what they did via the draft, as well as bringing in, guys like Joey Bosa, Larry Ogunjobi, Michael Hope. They made a lot of moves to improve this defensive line. Linebacker gets better, not only because you get Matt Milano back healthy, but you also add in Shaq Thompson from the Panthers. And then cornerback does improve because you bring back Tre'Davious White, former Pro Bowler for this team, and you also draft Maxwell Harrison in the first round out of Kentucky. I didn't love the pick, but I mean, he's slotted to be a starter in there for you, so we'll see how he performs as a rookie on this defense. So Bills should win 10 or 11 games. Wouldn't be shocked if they win 12 plus, win the AFC East, and win a playoff game again. But it's just on paper, I like a lot of teams more. Like on paper, in my opinion, I would view the Bills as like the 12th or 13th best offense and maybe the 11th or 12th best defense. I just don't. When I look at the Bills, I see a very well rounded team, but I don't see them being elite really in any area outside of the quarterback, which does a lot for you. But it's just every team we see past this point has something. They have some sort of calling card where I look at it and I say, wow, that is special. So for some reference there, that's why I have the Bills at 10 and not a little higher. Now, if you thought that was controversial, I got the Kansas City Chiefs all the way down at 9. This might seem crazy, but it's just, man, if you give me a second to explain myself here, there is just no way that the Chiefs all the stuff that had to happen for them to get to 15-1 like they were before they benched Mahomes in the final week, all the shit that happened in the fourth quarter of the games they played, there is no chance on earth even half of the stuff that happened last season takes place in 2025. They cannot be that lucky again. So because of that, I mean, that's like 3 or 4 games in and of itself that I just expect them to drop. And also, every single team in their division improved. And I think the time of them dominating the AFC West is over. If you've been paying attention to these rankings, I have them as the third most talented team in their own division. Now I expect them to, at least compete. And of course, I wouldn't be shocked if they win. They have the best coach, they have the best quarterback. They obviously have a history of and a track record of extreme success. But it's like I just at a certain point, right, their reign of dominance has to come to an end, right? The Patriots were not the best team in the NFL for 20 years in a row under Tom Brady. They had years and years and years on end where they didn't even make a Super Bowl, right? I feel like the Chiefs are entering into that era, right? It's been like what 6 years in a row where they've made the AFC Championship game. I'm not saying they miss it this year, but I am lower on the Chiefs than I've been in a very long time. I feel like they ridiculously overachieved last season. A lot of shit went in their way. I do not see that happening in 2025. I could look ridiculously stupid, 6, 7 months from now, but I'm willing to take that chance. I'm not going to sit here and give you all the most basic takes on the earth because that's not what I believe. I'm not going to be a sheep and just say the Chiefs are the best team in football because I don't think they are. Um, Last year, especially, they were an average offense. They really took a step back in 2023, but 2024 was the worst Chiefs offense, I believe, in the Mahomes era. And it was hard to watch at times. Like they were absolutely terrible for the first 3 quarters of the game, but then they were just unstoppable. In crunch time, a lot of that goes to having the best quarterback of the generation. But, you know, can Can he really keep it up? I'm going to show you the amount of game-winning drives and fourth quarter comebacks he had last season. It's just not sustainable. Like you cannot pick somebody to win the lottery twice, is what I'm trying to tell you here. So they were an average offense at best, but they did have a top 7 or 8 defense. Steve Spagnuolo has turned them consistently into one of the best defensive teams in the league. And when you pair that with Patrick Mahomes, that's how you get prolonged success like what they've been having. Let's take a look at the stats here. Take a look here at the amount of game winning drives and fourth quarter comebacks Patrick Mahomes had. He led the league in both categories. When people try and tell you Patrick Mahomes is not the best quarterback in the league, look at what he did with this group. Listen, for all the success, let's compare him with this group of weapons to Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen, zero fourth quarter. By the way, they won a lot of games, but zero fourth quarter comebacks, 2 game winning drives, and at least he had a Pro Bowl running back, James Cook. Mahomes, 5 fourth quarter comebacks, 7 game winning drives. That might be the most ever in a season. I'm not even joking there. I don't know, but if I had to take it, wow, that has to be a historic amount for one particular season. And listen, guys, they had 0 players who reached 1,000 yards of scrimmage. Kareem Hunt, they picked him up off the streets, and he became their best offensive weapon. Even better than Travis Kelce, who was falling off. He is not even close to what he was 3 or 4 years ago. He is done. He is just here in hopes of getting another ring. Xavier Worthy, as a rookie, I was slightly disappointed. I just thought they would use him in more creative ways, and especially because of all the injuries, I'm shocked they didn't go to him a little bit more. And this, for some reason, one way or another, maybe it's because the offensive line, maybe Mahomes doesn't have enough time to throw. They just don't have the deep ball like they used to have. I mean, outside of the occasional, what's his name? The occasional Justin Watson bomb. It's like they don't have guys who can get deep. I was hoping Xavier Worthy could be that guy, but the 4.2 speed did not translate, at least as a rookie. Now, listen, they found a lot of ways to get him the ball and, get him touches in the red zone, especially. And, they're creative like that. And I do expect him to take another step forward. But it's like, man, Hopkins, they brought him in, and it wasn't, it just didn't fit that well. It's like Isaiah Pacheco got hurt, Hollywood Brown got hurt. They just it was a disaster. It really Rasheed Rice got hurt. They were really crippled by injuries, and I mean, thanks to Patrick Mahomes, they still kind of scraped together a decent seed. Well, more than decent. They won 15 games and made the Super Bowl. But it's like, in spite of all of these things, somehow they had 7 game-winning drives and were 15-1 under Mahomes. And defensively, of course, I mean, what is there to say? I mean, Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquill, um, Trent McDuffie, Chris Jones, George Karlaftis. I mean, they have Pro Bowlers all over the place at all 3 levels. They probably also have the best group of linebackers in the league between Tranquill Bolton and Leo Chanel. So yeah, they're loaded defensively. We all know that. Let's take a look here at the depth chart and any sort of changes that they made. Now, offensively, they lose DeAndre Hopkins, but they more than make up for that. I expect them to be better offensively, is what I'm trying to say here, but I do not expect them to have as much success as they had late game and as many comebacks and all that stuff. Defensively, though, they did lose Tershawn Wharton, the defensive tackle, and Justin Reed in the back end. Now, I love the addition of Christian Fulton from the Chargers. That's a really underrated pickup there. Not a lot of people are talking about it. He is now their best boundary corner because Trent McDuffie's going to go back and play in the slot where he belongs. And now they have a real good outside cornerback because that's what they were lacking, really. And, you know, overall in their secondary, I do not like their group of safeties. I think Jaden Hicks was a bit of a steal in the 2024 draft, but Brian Cook is just not good in coverage. He's really bad. So losing Justin Reed, that's going to be tough to replace at least this year. And then, I mean, the front seven, it is what it is. I have no complaints about their front seven. They replace Tershawn Wharton with Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee. They still got Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, Mike Danadrew. Like, they're loaded. Their front seven is loaded. And between Christian Fulton and Trent McDuffie, I'm comfortable with their secondary. This should still be a top 10 defense, even if a couple things go wrong. But offensively, let's talk about the receiving core because it's going to look a lot different. I mean, Rasheed Rice hardly played. Hollywood Brown played like a game. So it's going to be pretty much Xavier Worthy and then a whole bunch of old guys that they brought back and Rasheed Rice, Hollywood Brown getting healthy and hopefully being key contributor. I think Rasheed Rice is going to be a real difference maker next season. If you look at last year, right, because as a rookie, he had like what close to 1,000 yards. He was big in the playoffs, but last year, because he only played what 3.5 games, and in those 3.5 games, he had almost 300 yards. So he was really a difference maker in the games he was playing. He was on pace for well over 1,000 yards until he got hurt. But if he can come back healthy, he's going to be a real difference maker for sure. The running back room, getting Isaiah Pacheco back healthy is huge. It is also a contract year for him. So, players typically have big years when that contract expires. So he's playing for that reason, of course. But their depth at the running back position is absolutely exceptional. Kareem Hunt is your backup. Elijah Mitchell, who had a massive season for the Niners a couple years ago. And then Brashard Smith. I love the Brashard Smith selection for the Chiefs in the seventh round. He is a former wide receiver, now running back. He can do so many things for you. And I love the idea of Brashard Smith and Xavier Worthy on the goal line should be terrifying to any team in the NFL. That could be really fun if Andy Reid explores those options. Also, they had Jalen Royals out of Utah State in the fourth round. Absolute steal. Some people had him as a top 50 player. So to get him in this receiving room, if Hollywood Brown, for example, does not work out, Jalen Royals will be taking over that spot very quickly. Let me just put it like that. The offensive line, let me scroll to it real quickly here for you. It should get well. Let me not say that. They lost Joe Thuney, that is such a massive loss. It's hard to even explain why it's so massive. He was arguably the best left tackle, not left tackle, arguably the best guard in the entire sport. He was playing at an all-pro level last year before he had to make the move to left tackle, and even once he made that move, he was still exceptional. Now they replaced him with Kingsley Suamataia, who was a former tackle that they picked in the 2024 draft in the second round. So they have high draft picks. First round pick Josh Simmons, second round pick Creed Humphrey, second round pick Suamataia. But it's like a lot of these guys, their left side is pretty much completely unproven, is what I'm trying to say here. Now they do still have a great interior between Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. Let me if I can finally find the Chiefs here. Yes, the Chiefs. Okay. Creed Humphrey, all pro level player. Over a 90 grade from PFF. He was actually over a 90 in everything. The man played over 1,100 snaps, had one penalty, and no sacks allowed. Creed Humphrey very well might be the best center in football. He is exceptional. He is pretty much worth two players just in and of itself. Trey Smith at the right guard also played over 1,100 snaps, very high grades for a guard, Pro Bowl level, in my opinion. Also had no sacks allowed. So between those two guys, right, over 2,200 snaps, zero sacks allowed. Exceptional. Juwan Taylor comes back playing right tackle. Chiefs fans are not too happy about that. He's a pretty good pass blocker. The problem with him, 17 penalties. 17 penalties, also 7 sacks allowed. So his PFF grades are pretty poor. He's not a good run blocker. And between the penalties and the sacks allowed, he might not even be that good of a pass blocker. So the problem is he's your best tackle because your left tackle is a rookie, Josh Simmons. You also brought in Jalen Moore from the Niners, who was a fill-in guy when Trent Williams got hurt. He didn't even play a fourth of the season, really. Now, his grades for that small sample size were pretty good. But, if you're starting him on the left side, I have real concerns about that. And Kingsley Suamataia, he only played about 200 snaps, but, brother, he was terrible last year. Maybe, moving to guard, he gets a little bit better, but I have real concerns for this Chiefs offensive line. It got worse. No matter what you can try and say or tell me, losing Joe Thuney is a insurmountable. That's a major hit that not a lot of people are talking about. People complain about how bad the Chiefs offensive line is. They just lost, arguably, their best player from that offensive line, debatably with Creed Humphrey. But I have major concerns about that area and just that position group overall. Now, like I said, defensively, I mean, I already mentioned the defense, but they should still be top 10. Offensively, I don't see them being top 10. So the reason I have them over the Bills is because they've simply beaten the Bills too many times. In the playoffs and the regular season, they're just simply better. We know this, that they're better than the Bills. But similarly to the Bills, I do not think they're elite on either side of the ball. They have a really, really good defense, arguably a great defense, but I do still have some question marks there. And then offensively, I think I've beaten this dead horse about how lucky they've gotten in late game scenarios. There's simply no way they can have that many comebacks and game winning drives and stuff like that 2 years in a row. So, and also their division getting significantly more difficult. There's no way they win 15 games. I would be shocked if the Chiefs won 13 games next year. I have them going either 10 or 11 wins in 2025. Quarterback remains the same. Wide receiver group certainly gets better because of the draft pick of Jalen Royals and multiple players getting back healthy. Running back gets better because hopefully you have Isaiah Pacheco coming back, but also adding Rashard Smith and Elijah Mitchell. Tight end remains the same, of course. Offensive line certainly gets worse. Defensive line gets worse because you lose Kershawn Wharton. You would hope Omar Norman Lott can fill those shoes, but we have to wait and see. Linebacker is exceptional. It remains the same. Safety gets worse. You lose Justin Reed. Cornerback gets better because you add Christian Fulton. Also, they draft, what's his name? Noah Williams. Where did he go to school? I'm blanking on the name. Cal? Is it Cal? I'm not sure. But a lot of people are pretty high on that Noah Williams pick. Keep an eye on him potentially becoming a starting boundary corner by season's end. So Chiefs are still really good. Obviously, I'm not saying they're ass. Would not be shocked if they, won the AFC Championship. They're a top 10 team, but I have other teams ahead of them because I just feel like they've kind of stagnated at this point, and I don't think they're going to continue their reign of success and dominance any longer. Next up, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers all the way up here at number 8. Now, this may seem shocking because I'm sure when a lot of people think of the Buccaneers compared to the Bills and Chiefs, you would say they're clearly worse than both of them. But first of all, I'm really glad that Todd Bowles just recently got his big extension because a lot of people have really been coming for his head for no reason. I mean, the Todd Bowles hate is so forced, it's insane to me. They have never lost the division under his head. They've won the division all 3 years. They've won a playoff game in. They definitely won one 2 years ago. Should have won. Todd Bowles' defense stopped the Commanders on the goal line. Baker Mayfield fumbled. That's why they didn't win a playoff game last year against the Commanders. But yeah, I think Todd Bowles has made them incredibly successful. And guess what? They're the favorites to win the division for a 4th year in a row. So, matter of fact, it might be even longer. They might at this point they might have won the division like 6, 7 years in a row, going back to the Tom Brady days. But yeah, they have been on a string of dominance over the NFC South. And if we talk about what they were last season, not a lot of people. I don't know how many people know this. The Buccaneers were a top 3 offense last season. The Lions get a lot of credit. The Ravens get a lot of credit. Not a lot of people talk about just how good, how amazing the Buccaneers were last season. They were average defensively. That's certainly an area where they need to improve. But unlike the Chiefs and the Bills, I can confidently tell you that the Buccaneers are elite on one side of the ball, and that's the offense. So let's take a look at the stats here. Obviously, a lot was made about Baker having a career breakout season. I mean, close to 5,000 yards and 44 touchdowns. I mean, he was definitely in the race for MVP because Baker last season was what everybody was envisioning when he got drafted number 1 overall. He was playing, he was having fun, he was making tough throws. I mean, he was just putting up monster numbers, and it resulted in wins. I mean, they were having major success. And a lot of people talk about the receiving core. The Buccaneers have 2 running backs who have each had 1,500 yards one of the last 2 years. In 2023, Rashad White had over 1,500 yards. Last year, he had over 1,000. And Bucky Irving came through as a rookie with over 1,500 yards from scrimmage, 8 touchdowns. I mean, it does not get a lot of talk about the best running back duo. People talk about Gibbs and Montgomery, Bijan and Algier. Bucky Irving and Rashad White are top 3 easily. Might even be top 2, honestly. And then the receiver room. I mean, they got multiple 1,000-yard receivers. Before Chris Godwin got hurt, he was playing at an elite level. He was going to have more receiving yards than Mike Evans. Mike Evans still managed to put together 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns, by the way, in only 14 games. Cade Otton is a really good tight end, 600 yards. Nobody talked about Cade Otton. 600 yards from him. Jalen McMillan had a really solid rookie season, 500 yards, 8 touchdowns as a rookie. In this offense, McMillan had 8 touchdowns. John Tucker had like a 200-yard game against the Saints, I think. He had over 400 yards. This is an exceptional, elite offense. This is the best group of weapons in football, in my opinion. They got 2,000-yard receivers, 2 running backs who could rush for 1,500 yards, have 1,500 yards from scrimmage, rather. And it's elite. It is absolutely elite. And defensively, they only got better. Let me quickly take a look. Who was the best defensive player that they lost? I'm trying to find him. I'm not sure. I don't think they lost any of their key defensive players. So they're retaining all their best defenders, got better on that side of the ball, and they were a top three defense. Sorry, top three offense, rather, that got better as well. So let's take a look at their depth chart here. Let me start off with the offensive line because it's the least impressive part of their offense. So I want to build up. I want to get better the more I talk about it. If I scroll over here quickly. Okay. So left tackle Tristan Wirfs, all pro. One of the best players in football. Zero sacks allowed as a starting left tackle. Over 1,000 snaps played. A 93.7 PFF pass blocking grade. Is he the best pass protecting left tackle in football? Maybe Trent Williams has a case to be made there, but he's up there. If he's not first, he's top three for sure. Ben Bredesen, left guard, played over 1,000 snaps. Pretty average, not going to lie. There's not a whole lot to write home about. Graham Barton, the rookie, first round pick last season, over 1,000 snaps played. Very good grades. As a rookie, if he was just a regular center, I'd say, oh, he's above average. But as a rookie, very, very good. Only one sack allowed, too many penalties. That's the problem. 13 penalties, especially for a center. He definitely has to clean that up, but his PFF grades were good. Only allowed one sack. I see him being a very good center for years to come. Cody Mock, former second round pick, North Dakota State, had a breakout season last year, damn near a Pro Bowl level, in my opinion. Very, very good grades for an offensive guard. Played over 1,100 snaps last season. And then Luke Gadecki, their right tackle, missed a little bit of time, but good PFF grades overall. Only three sacks allowed, and very well rounded, both a good pass blocker and a good run blocker. So it's a talented offensive line, and it could get even better depending on how much Graham Barton improves this offseason. So offensive line, good. Take a look at their receiving core. I mean, brother, they have four receivers who could be either a number one or number two in this league. It's exceptional. Obviously, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, they're your vets. They're their, established former Super Bowl winners. Both could put up 1,000 yards any given season. And then Jalen McMillan, Emeka Egbuka as the future. I mean, they got Sterling Shepard as a wide receiver five. I mean, it's a loaded group of receivers. Honestly, I'm not sure if Egbuka is going to be the starter just because Jalen McMillan, in my opinion, had such a good rookie season. And listen, I don't love the Ibuka pick just because they could have had, Will Johnson, Mike Green. They could have had the real difference maker on the defensive side. They really didn't need a receiver. They were top three offense without him. But I mean, hey, they had injuries. Mike Evans missed time. Chris Godwin missed time. If Emeka Ibuka was on this team last year, he would have started like what 10, 11 games last year. So, it's important to realize that while this offensive group of receivers is very talented, they have dealt with some injury concerns, especially last season. That's important to talk about. Um, the running back room, I mean, between Bucky Irving and Rashad White, I love them both. They're both exceptional. Obviously, if Baker Mayfield, he doesn't even have to play at the level he played last season. If he plays 90% of what he was last year, Bucks are going to be top three offense, might even be number one in the entire league. They're that loaded. Defensively, not a lot of people are talking about the addition of Hassan Reddick, and it could be massive. I mean, he could be like the former, what's his name, Shaquille Barrett that they've been missing, a true number one pass rusher. You can pretty much throw out his last year with the Jets. I have no idea what happened with that situation. He didn't want to be there. They didn't want to play him. It was weird. If he can just go back to what he was in the Eagles or with the Eagles in 2023, I mean, this is a massive, massive underrated signing. Kalijah Cansey, Vita Veda, what a great group of interior defensive linemen. And you also got Yaya Diaby coming off the edge. Chris Braswell, they drafted him in the second round last season. God forbid he has an emergence as a sophomore. That could be massive for them. Their group of linebackers, outside of Levante David, who's a established, Hall of Very good, really talented linebacker, outside of him, it's a question mark. I don't know who's going to get the start next to him. And whoever does get the start, I'm not sure they're going to be all that good. But Levante David, he's a guy you can pencil in. You know what you're going to get out of him. The secondary, it was a concern last year, but I mean, if you can just tell me they're going to be healthy. I like Antoine Winfield, Jamel Dean. Zion McCollum, I think, had a breakout year last season. Tyke Smith, as a rookie, did a lot, especially as a nickelback. And you add both Benjamin Morrison and Jacob Parrish. If you would have told me you spent a first round pick on Benjamin Morrison and a second round pick on Jacob Parrish, I'd be happy with that. They got those two guys in the second and third round. So their depth at cornerback just took a massive skyrocket jump. I mean, they're incredibly talented there now. So, I mean, I would be shocked if this defense is not top 12. I mean, they got undeniably better. Um, yeah, man. I mean, it's so many reasons to be hype for this Buccaneers team. And not to mention, they play in one of, if not the weakest divisions. I mean, the Panthers and the Saints combined, those are four free wins. And they didn't beat the Falcons a single time last year. So if you're telling me that they get four wins off the Panthers and Saints and just one game off the Falcons, you're 5-1 in your division. How do the Buccaneers try and tell me? How do the Buccaneers not win 11 games next year? I don't see how. I don't see how, and I definitely think they're going to win the division for a fourth year in a row under Todd Bowles. So the Buccaneers, what is there to say? Quarterback remains the same. Wide receiver, I mean, first of all, Godwin and Mike Evans missed 13 games combined last year. So just giving them both starting off the season healthy, and then of course adding Ibuka, that's a great addition to the wide receiver room. Running back remains the same. Tight end remains the same. Kate Otton's underrated. Offensive line remains the same. Could get better though. Could get better. Defensive line certainly gets better by adding Hassan Reddick. Linebacker remains the same. Safety remains the same. Cornerback, you draft two difference makers as rookies. At least one of them has to be, become a long-term starter for them. So yeah, a lot to be excited about. If you're a Buccaneers fan, I expect them to be really good, and they come in as my number 18 in the NFL. We're really talking about some real dangerous teams here. The Buccaneers might be my dark horse. I'm not trying to spoil anything. I may or may not have the Buccaneers making the Super Bowl next year. I just think they're that talented, especially offensively. So leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.